Power, influence, and wealth can make even the most ordinary people tremble. But sometimes the smallest act of courage can shatter fear in ways no one expects. This story begins on a sunny late morning in the bustling cafe district of Parkside, where the aroma of fresh pastries and coffee mingled with the chatter of regulars and tourists alike. Clara Benton, a young waitress in her late 20s, moved through the crowd with practiced grace, balancing trays, refilling cups, and smiling through exhaustion. She had grown used to the murmurs, the whispers, and the occasional condescending glance. Life had never been gentle with Clara, yet she refused to let bitterness take root. She carried a quiet dignity, one that often went unnoticed but never faded. If you believe kindness and second chances still matter, go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe to Good Deed Stories. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. The cafe was known as a hotspot for high-profile visitors, a place where local elites and business magnates felt comfortable sipping their espresso without being noticed. But one morning, the air shifted in an instant when a sleek black SUV rolled up outside. Out stepped a woman whose presence made the chatter hush. Marguerite Kingsley, the mother of one of the wealthiest men in the city, had a reputation that preceded her everywhere she went. People whispered that she could ruin careers with a flick of her wrist, that she was feared by staff and patrons alike. Her sharp eyes, impeccably tailored suit, and commanding stride were enough to send even the boldest cafe employees into nervous silence. Clara, however, noticed something most overlooked. Behind the intimidating exterior, Marguerite's hands trembled slightly, betraying a fragility that her reputation masked. Clara had seen enough of life to know that fear often came from misjudgment rather than truth, and instinctively, she felt there was more to this woman than her legend suggested. As Marguerite approached the counter, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, the entire cafe seemed to shrink in her shadow. Marguerite ordered with clipped precision, barely acknowledging Clara's presence, and then seated herself at a corner table where she could observe the room like a hawk. Waiters avoided her path. Customers instinctively quieted their laughter. For Clara, this was not a moment to shrink back, but a challenge to face. She had learned long ago that fear only grows when left unchallenged. Hours passed as Marguerite sipped her coffee and scrutinized the staff. Her gaze landed repeatedly on Clara, and each time, Clara felt the weight of judgment pressing down. Most would have crumbled, would have hesitated, would have felt their knees weaken under such scrutiny. Clara's stomach fluttered, her mind raced with the risks. What if she angered the woman? What if she misstepped? And yet, something inside her whispered that courage sometimes required stepping forward when the world expected you to stay small. The pivotal moment came when Marguerite's cup tipped slightly, spilling a few drops of coffee onto the pristine tablecloth. An assistant scurried over, panicked and apologetic, but Marguerite's cold glare froze him in place. Without thinking twice, Clara approached with a fresh cup and a folded napkin. She knelt subtly, dabbing the spill, her movements careful yet confident. She looked Marguerite directly in the eye and said, softly but firmly, that accidents happen and that it was no trouble at all. The room fell silent. The assistants stopped their anxious shuffling. Even a few of the wealthier patrons peeked over their cups. Marguerite's expression faltered slightly, as if she had not anticipated this gentle audacity. There was a long pause, broken only by the faint hum of the espresso machine. Clara didn't back down. She straightened, offered a polite smile, and stepped aside, leaving Marguerite to her coffee. Minutes later, Marguerite called Clara over, not with anger, but with curiosity. The entire cafe held its collective breath. Clara's heart raced, but she maintained composure. Marguerite asked questions about the cafe, about the staff, and about Clara herself. What Clara noticed was that beneath the sharp tone and the icy stare, Marguerite listened earnestly, seeking something she had perhaps never found in the world. Authenticity. As the conversation unfolded, Clara shared stories of her life. Raising her younger sister after their parents passed, working multiple jobs to keep the household afloat, and her unwavering commitment to treating every person with respect regardless of their status. She spoke not to impress, not to seek favor, but to offer a truth that could not be ignored, that kindness and integrity matter more than fear and intimidation. Marguerite, for the first time, let her facade soften. Her eyes glimmered with something resembling recognition, as if she had been searching for this very quality all her life. Then came the moment no one in the cafe expected. Marguerite reached into her designer bag and quietly slid a folded note across the table to Clara. Clara hesitated, then picked it up. Written in elegant script were the words, "You are not afraid of truth, and that is rare. I respect that." The note was simple, yet its weight was monumental. It was a recognition of Clara's bravery, her steadfastness, and her refusal to bow to intimidation. It was also a subtle acknowledgement that Marguerite herself had been shaped by fear and that perhaps, in this small cafe, she had found a measure of redemption. That Clara's hands shook slightly as she returned to the counter, the note clutched in her palm. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room, witnessing a quiet revolution of courage and compassion. The patrons who had once feared Marguerite now began to murmur among themselves, realizing that the woman's reputation did not have to dictate their reality. Even the staff, previously rigid with fear, relaxed, emboldened by Clara's example. It wasn't long after that day that Marguerite returned several times, not as a figure to be feared, but as someone who sought to understand the lives of the people around her. She asked questions, listened to stories, and even contributed quietly to charitable initiatives at the cafe, often leaving behind generous tips accompanied by notes of encouragement. Clara's bravery had sparked a transformation, not just in Marguerite, but in the atmosphere of the cafe and in the hearts of all who witnessed it. Clara herself continued her work with renewed purpose. She realized that fear only has power when people allow it, and that sometimes standing firm and showing kindness could change the world more than any act of aggression. Her story quickly spread beyond the walls of the cafe, shared by patrons on social media and in conversations across the city. People spoke of her courage, her humility, and the way a single act of composure and compassion had diffused a lifetime of fear. If this story has touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Good Deed Stories. Your support helps bring more stories of courage, kindness, and second chances to life. Weeks later, the cafe hosted a small community gathering. Marguerite personally thanked Clara in front of the staff and patrons, emphasizing how much she had learned from her courage and humanity. She even funded a small scholarship in Clara's name for young people who worked while pursuing education, turning an ordinary cafe into a space of hope and opportunity. Clara felt overwhelmed, but her heart was full. She understood now that bravery isn't always loud or aggressive. It is sometimes quiet, persistent, and compassionate. By standing firm in her values, she had not only earned respect, but had also inspired a ripple of change that extended far beyond the cafe's walls. Before we end, comment courage and kindness if you believe in standing firm and helping others even in the face of fear. Let's celebrate those who make the world brighter through compassion. As the sun set over Parkside that evening, Clara walked home, reflecting on how fear can be challenged, how reputation can be softened, and how one person's courage can create a wave of positivity that changes lives forever. Marguerite, once a symbol of intimidation, had become a quiet testament to the transformative power of humility, respect, and understanding. And Clara, the waitress who refused to bow to fear, proved that sometimes the smallest acts of courage hold the greatest power of all.